Good evening from New York. This is Tuesday, November 16th, 721 days until the 2012 presidential elections. The joke that is bipartisanship tonight took another major credibility hit. It's 493rd of the month. The big McConnell-Boehner White House meeting day after tomorrow postponed at the Republicans' request until the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. No reason given beyond scheduling conflicts, but this news does come in concert with a growing sense that the Republicans could not be bipartisan by themselves. If you have two different conservative parties, they not only will eventually clash, they will eventually begin to clash on a daily basis. Our fifth story, I worry a lot. Republican Senator John McCain reacting to Republican Senator-elect Rand Paul on the issue of cutting the bloated defense budget, or as McCain calls it, isolationism. McCain addressing the Foreign Policy Initiative think tank, not by singing bomb, 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 bomb Iran, but by answering a question about possible erosion of Republican support for the misnamed war on terror. He said isolationism worried him, and then he dragged in Mr. Paul of Kentucky. You may recall that during Paul's campaign for office, he was unabashed in touting his ideas about foreign policy. He doesn't really have any. In July, he told the National Review, quote, "I'm not thinking about Afghanistan. Foreign policy is really a complete non-issue." Senator McCain now acknowledging that kind of thing scares him.
I worry a lot because always throughout the history of the Republican Party in modern times, there's been obviously, as we know, two wings: the isolationist wing, manifested before World War II and at other times, and the internationalist side. And so I think there are going to be some tensions within our party. I don't know the incoming Senator Rand Paul. I respect him, admire his victory, but already he has already talked about withdrawals from or cuts in defense, etc., and a number of others are.
Hey, you kids, get off my defense budget. Mr. Paul's coalition of the cutting entering the Senate includes Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, who has criticized Congress for voting for programs the Pentagon does not even want, and Mark Kirk in Illinois, who has called for across-the-board reductions in defense spending. On the House side, Florida Representative-elect and disgraced former Army Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, who has security clearance on loan from God, telling ABC News today, you have to cut defense spending. Back to McCain. The ranking Republican on armed services acknowledges there should be some defense cuts to the defense cuts, but he wants to emphasize he's really worried about Rand Paul's foreign policy.
There's no doubt that this new group of Republicans have come in with a commitment to take a meat axe to spending. I'm not sure that you could say, okay, everything in defense is sacrosanct, while the rest of these cuts in education, social programs, etc., are taking place. So I worry a lot about the rise of protectionism and isolationism in the Republican Party.
We're joined now by the Democratic Congressman from New York, Anthony Weiner. Congressman, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Big picture first. Boehner and McConnell postponed this big bipartisan shindig with the president. Goes from Thursday to 2 weeks from today. Does it mean anything?
Well, perhaps. I mean, the hard truth about the Republicans that got elected is they came in with a series of things that they're against, and now when it's their turn to kind of talk about what they're here to do, they seem to be befuddled, both internally and talking to anyone else. I think most likely they didn't want to sit down at the White House because they don't know what they believe yet. And that's going to be a real problem with them when it's time to govern. And I think a lot of the people that turn to them for change are going to find out that they really bought a pig in a poke.
Well, to that point, the cutting the Pentagon and these opposing messages from Senator-elect Paul and Senator McCain, and Mr. McCain notwithstanding, do you think this is one issue that there actually might be some compromise on, and that something might actually get done in terms of at least taking the Pentagon off the list of sacred cows?
Well, perhaps, but remember, we've had 3 days with three kind of almost examples of schizophrenia among the Republican Party. First, they say they want to extend the Bush tax cuts, but they want to cut the deficit. That's in conflict. Next, they said we want to cut earmarks, but we don't trust the president to do the spending either. So I don't know who's supposed to make these allocations if not Congress and not the president. And now today they're fighting about whether you should be cutting defense. I think there absolutely is a lot of room where a lot of Democrats, you look at agriculture policy, you look at defense policy, where many of us believe that these programs are functionally written to make them uncuttable because they impact so many people's districts. districts. I think we can get those things done, but first things first, the Republicans seem unable, even in these early first days when they're in their euphoria, to come up with anything resembling a platform for how they're going to govern the next couple of years.
You just touched on that problem that seems to be at the core of this with the Pentagon, this procurement process where the manufacturing jobs and other jobs are in, as you said, varied districts, and nobody wants to cut those jobs because it affects varied districts. Is there a way out of just that might itself reduce some of the extra spending in the Pentagon?
Well, perhaps. I mean, I've always marveled at the idea that the number of members of Congress who don't get money from these defense contractors still is larger than those that do. I think that we do have an opportunity now, if there really is going to be this effort to really look at every line of the budget. I think we should not be buying things the Department of Defense says, as a matter of fact, they don't want. We do that all the time in Congress, and I think that's something that Democrats and Republicans can agree upon.
We've seen Republicans when in control of Congress and the White House, and they did not cut defense. Obviously, they increased it with the war of choice. Do you think if all the Democrats tomorrow announced we're in favor of cutting the Pentagon budget by 3%, that all the Republicans would line up, even the ones who campaigned on the same kind of idea, would line up against you just because you came out and said that?
Perhaps. I mean, I don't really know. It's difficult to say. I mean, are members of Congress who got elected from these defense districts, are they really going to say no to their own sacred cows? I mean, maybe that happens. I'm not sure what the correct policy is here. Maybe someone is supposed to advocate for their home district. But what is important is that we're learning that none of these things got hashed out traditionally when they do get hashed out, which is during elections and campaigns. A lot of these guys are already starting to contradict themselves the moment they get to town because, frankly, they came in on this effort of just saying we're going to be opposed to everything that goes on in Washington. Well, now I got news for them. They are Washington.
From the Capitol, New York Congressman Anthony Weiner. As always, great thanks. Have a good evening.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.